Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Be Remote podcast. For today's episode, we have with us Nicole. Nicole is a co-founder and chief people officer at Deskpass, and she's co-founder at she's a co-founder at Second Shift Chicago. I'm super excited to have you on the podcast, Nicole. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat.
So tell us more about yourself and how did you start at Deskpass and also like Second Shift Chicago?
A great question. So I think the biggest thing is that I grew up in a multicultural home. And so I always knew that there was a beauty in having people from all different backgrounds coming together, that, you know, people of different cultures and backgrounds and experiences, when brought together, lead to better conversations and better understanding of the world and just a richer experience overall. And so that was always me all throughout my life. My background in business is from business operations, marketing, advertising, events. I was always a person bringing people together. And so fast forward to about 8 years ago, I walked into a co-working space and I fell in love. I noticed the environment. I noticed that there was people in suits over there. There was your startup founders over here. You had your nonprofit over here, and everybody was working out of the same environment. And so I immediately asked, what is this place? And when I found out about the concept of co-working, I fell in love. And I fell in love because, one, it combined my personal and my professional interests. Personally having all these different people and the community aspect, as you know, with co-working, there's such a big community aspect. I mean, one of the biggest benefits of co-working is the ability to meet other people of different industries and backgrounds, people you wouldn't normally cross paths with if you were in just one company office all day long, or only hanging out with people in your industry. So that's my background with co-working. I then researched co-working and opened my first co-working space in Chicago about 9 months later. I opened the first location was called The Shift. The second one was called Second Shift. And so that was my background in co-working. I ran my own co-working spaces for years. And then my second location, I had a partner and great community there. And all the while, we were also building Deskpass, which is a network of co-working spaces around the globe that now provides companies and their remote employees access to desks, meeting rooms, and offices around the world. We're helping hundreds of companies and thousands of their employees navigate the return to work or this new hybrid work future, because we are their solution. So companies work with us to provide us as a benefit to their employees, and their employees have different levels of stipends that they can use to book desks, meeting rooms, and offices in their city, close to their home, or when they travel, so they can meet with their colleagues or with their clients, and just always have access to professional spaces.
Yeah. I think the concept of co-working is like really amazing because, and I think it's gonna be a huge industry even after the pandemic, because like a lot of companies, they're already remote and some of the companies are hybrid. So they don't want to, like most of the companies, I think they don't want to keep the office space. So they are just gonna book some slots, like, the seats, and employees can come over there. And suppose I'm in San Francisco and like my company is in New York, for example. So I can still go to any co-working space in San Francisco, for example, and meet people from other companies. And so I think that is really exciting about co-working space. So it kind of helps remote to keep remote work and hybrid work alive. I guess it would be very important.
I completely agree. And, we see there's no one size fits all for companies either. We see some companies that have completely got rid of their company office, and they now give Deskpass to all of their employees, and they let their employees choose what type of workspace they want. We also see other companies who have scaled down. They still have their company office, but maybe they reduced their footprint and they went from, a very large office to a smaller office. And now they have, they give us as a benefit to employees so that they have almost like satellite offices close to their home. And then we also see companies who have not changed their company office whatsoever, but they realize that their employees want to stay working remote. And so they say, look, you can stay working remote 1, 2, 3, 4 days a week, 5 days a week. But if you do want access to a workspace, because we believe it increases productivity, increases employee engagement and happiness, here is your employee benefit now, similar to companies giving the benefit of a gym or travel expense and things like that. They now say, look, not everybody wants to be working from home 5 days a week. So here's how you can get out of your house and take a shower,
Right.
put on a nice outfit, and go be around other people.
Yeah, this is gonna be a game changer. Yeah, seems like. Like Women's Day is almost here. So let's talk about like advantages of like working remotely as a woman, like having a flexible work-life balance. So what are the important like why it is important to work remotely? Like, yeah, what are the
So
advantages? Yeah.
we still live in a world where traditionally family care responsibilities fall largely on the woman. And so pre-pandemic, a lot of women, when they had young children at home, they had to pick between their career and being a mother. And so they would lose out on, maybe staying at home for a few months or years and then having a hard time returning to the workplace. And the one of the silver linings of this horrible thing we've gone through is that it allowed everybody to stay working remote, and women especially have been able to juggle those family care responsibilities a lot easier, because one, when you're working remote, you don't have to have that 30-minute 1-hour commute in the morning and the evening, so you have more time to spend with your family. A lot of women have told me that during that time, that having that amount of time allowed them to actually work during the times that their child is sleeping or doing activities. So they were actually able to retain their job. Also the flexibility. So now with working remote and companies working in an asynchronous communication where it's not like they have to immediately reply, women have told me that they now can wake up early while the children are sleeping, get a few hours of work in, take care of the children during the day, and then in the evenings or in the late afternoon, when maybe their partner comes home or when they have family that can come over and help, they can also work. So they have now spread out their schedule, allowing them to retain their job. And then third, what I think is really interesting is it's just changed the culture. It has like kind of lifted the veil on what it's like to have children at home. I'm very blessed. I have 3 co-founders, 2 of which, all 3 are men. 2 of them have young children at home. One has 3, one has 2. And what I love is that it actually, we're expecting a child, but we don't have any children yet. And for the past few years, especially during the pandemic, I have witnessed what it's like for my partners to have their children come in crying, their wives come in saying, I need you right now, please. Like, I have a meeting, can we switch? And what's great is that now men are also bearing those responsibilities, and it has, working from home when you're in someone's house, and it is already very personal. And when you start to see their children and their pets and what their home looks like, it removes that barrier. And I think that has changed the dynamic amongst employees, where you're now seeing your counterparts and their children, and it allows you to be more real and a lot more understanding. My partners, when they had young children before we're going to have young children, and I know that in a few months when we have a child, I'm going to be in that same boat. And I realized, like, thank goodness that for remote work and flexibility, where they're going to be just as understanding when I'm in that position. So I think that is something that is really interesting. And then there's so many other things about women in co-working, like women being able to find workspaces where they feel comfortable. There's a lot of workspaces where women go to because they know it'll be more other women than perhaps a workspace full of men, where they can actually just kind of get to work and not feel uncomfortable. And so I think that in itself, like, what it always comes down to is the freedom to choose. When people have 50 workspaces near their home that they can choose from, they tend to go to workspaces that they either feel comfortable in because it's people who look and act and, like them, or there's a specific niche that they are fulfilling, like perhaps it's a creative workspace, a tech-focused workspace, a green energy workspace. And so people want the flexibility to find a place where they feel most comfortable. And with women, that's very important, as well as we know that in some environments they can be preyed upon, bothered.
So on Deskpass, we can basically find a perfect co-working space for us, right? Like, awesome.
Yeah, there's plenty of filters. You can even search. What I love is, we can search by social impact. You can search by workspaces that are owned by women or people of color, indigenous people. You can look for workspaces based on mood. So you can say, today is a day that I have a lot of heads down work. I want to find a quiet space. And then maybe on another day, today's the day I have a lot of emails, but I don't really need to focus. So I'm just going to go to a space that's lively. And then we also have luck spaces. So maybe on the days that you want to invite your clients and really impress them, you can look for a luck space and make sure that, that everything is premium.
Awesome. This is really interesting. Cool. So let's talk about remote onboarding as well. Like you have mentioned about that. So what exactly remote onboarding is and why it is very important?
Oh, I think what's most important is that it sets the tone for a new employee. And I mean, everybody needs to be onboarded into the company and learn the ropes of how the company operates. And I always joke that most people these days, when you say, think about it like a time where you were onboarded to a company and it was not a good experience. And everybody seems to have that experience where either like put in a back room to video with nobody around, or they were sent home with this big manual and to read 30 pages and like there was no engagement. And so remote onboarding doesn't have to be like that, or just new employee onboarding in general. And I think it's important, like I said, because it sets the tone, but it also describes your company culture right away. So I think remote onboarding also starts before you're even hired. So remote onboarding should extend to the job description. In the job description, your potential employees should already understand what type of company culture you have, what your benefits are, what the expectations are, what the communication channels are, so that there's no surprises, so that once they get hired, they're not like, oh, I had no idea. So I think that's always my tip. Remote onboarding extends to the hiring process. But in terms of actual onboarding, we built out a whole self-guided onboarding process in Notion that we think is really fun, where it's divided into 2 different days. And when a new employee signs up or starts with us, the very first day, well, actually a week before, we send them an email letting them know how their week of training is going to go, so that they understand that the first 2 days they'll be focused on this, and then they'll meet with their manager, and then they'll meet with their teammates, so that, the Friday before they start, they are going into the weekend knowing what they're going to have on Monday. There's no anxiety. They can relax and enjoy. And I think that's really important too, is honoring them as a human and saying, even though you start on Monday, here's what to expect. Also, have a great weekend. Enjoy. We'll see you Monday. We even do things like on Monday, we try to start a little later. So we don't say, okay, 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. We're like, have a coffee, go for a walk. Let's start at your 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. time. How often do you get an hour or 2 in the morning completely to yourself? So we try to do that as nice to say, take some time for yourself. And then that morning we meet. It's me as the chief people officer, and then their manager, and then them. So the 3 of us meet on a call and just kind of say, hey, great to see you. Welcome to the team. We give them an overview of that day's onboarding, and then they get right into it. So they have a self-guided onboarding process where they go through our process and they read each section. And what I'm really proud of is the very first section has nothing to do about us. The first hour to 2 hours of their time it's all about them. So we gift them with the Gallup Strengths Finder test, where they can learn their top 5 strengths, and they don't have to share their results with us. It's just our gift to them. And that first day, we ask them questions about how they work. When do they feel the most supported at work? What are some things that they didn't enjoy in their previous work relationships and setups? What are some things that they like in a manager? So that we know that right away. And so the first 2 hours are spent on learning all about them. After that, we go into a little bit about the company, but there's so many studies that have shown when people are honored for who they are first versus just spewing company information, they immediately feel more aligned with the team and with the brand. And I just think that's the right thing to do as well.
It is.
So that first day, we're humans, right?
It's very important, but I think a lot of companies don't do this, because what you have just said now, it's like it could make a lot of difference. Like whenever someone is joining, like half of the time I think people are clueless, like what I'm going to do now, what I'm going to do like next week. But if companies start adopting to what you just said, like there will be a huge difference in a lot of things. Yeah, people, like, it will
Yeah.
feel, more human. Like people would like, yeah, like they will feel like comfortable. They would feel like home, basically.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
everything you said, I agree and second. And what's interesting is now with so many employees being remote, they're starting at a new company, but they're completely alone.
Yeah.
And, at least when you would go into an office and start as a new role, you would see other people, you'd have a little bit more connection. But I mean, imagine sitting on your computer, getting started at a new company, and it's like all you're learning is like this very boring stuff and you're by yourself. Like it could be isolating. And I want them to
Yeah,
feel excited on their first day. And
exactly.
we've been completely remote since the day that we started the company, and so we're very intentional about making sure that our remote employees actually feel connected to the team. So that first day is a lot about that. And then of course at the end of the first day we have a check-in again, make sure they feel comfortable, make sure that the tools that they're using are understandable. We also ask them to take notes all throughout the way, so that way if they have questions, they can check with me at the end of the day. So that way during the middle of the day, they know, okay, I have a question, but I'll save it and then I'll get my question answered at the end of the day. What else? I guess.
But
Yeah,
how do
so
we
that,
do this?
and then
Like suppose maybe right now maybe you are a small organization, so you can talk to this kind of people. But what like if there are lots of employees, and if you want to scale this kind of organization, so how can we do this, like gives like this kind of treatment to everyone? Is it possible? Like, what do you think?
yeah, I mean, our onboarding is self-guided. So in Notion, we have our different stacks that every day, they go through one by one. And I mean, we put everybody through it. So I mean, you could put 30 people through it in the same day.
Right. It's
Everybody has their
asynchronous,
own
basically,
board.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the key, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's different. And then, as we get into later parts of onboarding, it's customized based on, the department that you're in and things like that. But, they're already set up with Slack. They've already met me. They've already met their manager
Right.
on that first day. And they know that if they have any issues whatsoever, they have already 2 people that they can ping immediately in Slack. They also know that at the end of the day, they're going to have a check-in with us. They're going to have one the next morning, so that they know that, like, okay, if something goes wrong, don't worry, like you'll have a checkpoint and access to someone that can help.
So are these like engagement techniques as well, engagement tactics? Like how do you engage with the employees? Like if you are if you're an asynchronous organization, so how do you engage? Like, is it from Slack, or like do you get on a call as well?
Yeah, we're always evolving our practices because we do have employees around the world, from Portland, Oregon on the west coast of the US to Sydney, Australia. So I mean, already the time zones, you have to take into consideration about that. Right now, we do a monthly town hall once a month where all employees are invited. And we actually found a sweet spot where our employee in Sydney, Australia, he's an early bird. So we have it at 3:00 Eastern on Thursdays, and it works for him in Australia, and it works for everybody else from Europe to USA to Latin America. And of course, one day that might not be the case. So we might have to record it and, switch off our times or something like that. But I think the biggest thing is to always, it seems simple, but it's always to be conscious of everybody in the organization, where they're located, what time zones they're on, and to check in with them. So when we set up this time, we checked in with the employee in Barcelona and also in Australia and also in, West Coast, and said, hey, we're thinking of doing this time. So instead of like a top-down approach, it's always making sure. I learned that from managing my co-working spaces, that when decisions are made, even though, yes, it makes sense for leadership to make those decisions, it always is helpful to include your community. So this was a big tenet of co-working space management. Like, for example, when I was running my co-working spaces, before I bought anything in the space, whether it was a new couch or just different type of coffee, I asked our members. And what's great is they all said, I like that you asked, like, here's our preference, but ultimately, it's up to you, but thank you so much for asking. And I use the same premise with our company. So I think that's a big thing, is just always making sure that you're surveying and including people in the decision, because what happens is once they see that decision get implemented, they're like, oh, I helped with that, or
Mhm.
they asked me about that. So I think
Right.
that in itself is a big way to drive cohesion amongst remote employees. In terms of communication, we do use Slack. We use Slack for our communication. We use Notion and a few other things, but Slack is our communication. And in terms of, like you said, asynchronous communication,
Mhm.
we have an employee handbook with remote work policies and communication best practices. And when employees are first start, we explain to them, like, people have, everybody is in different places around the world. We understand that this is a flexible workspace. There's
Yeah.
sometimes where in the middle of the day you have to go to the doctor or something like that. What we ask is that when you start with us, your manager and your teammates know your working hours. So maybe your working hours are 9 to 5, maybe they are
Mhm.
8 to 6, and it's just a general time frame where we can expect that you're online. Understandably, once in a while you might have to go to the dentist, and in those cases, you block that time out on your calendar. And if you are, and
Mhm.
that way we know that you're not available. And if you are gone for longer periods of time, to let us know. So if you're going to be gone all day Friday, just give us a ping. No one's watching you or keeping notes of how often
Mhm.
you're gone. It's just more of a courtesy, and utilizing things in Slack like your status, using integrations. Like I chose to integrate my Google Calendar with Slack so that if somebody goes to message me on Slack and I'm in a scheduled meeting, they'll see that I'm in a meeting.
Yeah.
They can still, of course, send me a message, but they know right away, okay, she's in a meeting. So if she's not getting back to me, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
probably why. But we
Mhm.
don't have expectations of immediate response in Slack.
Yeah.
What we do say is, if you do need an immediate response, let's say it's an emergency, to always let people know where they can find you directly. So for example, for most of us, it's, look, if I don't write back to you, like if this is an emergency and you need an answer immediately, call me on my cell phone,
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
text me.
Mhm.
And if you message me in Slack and it's kind of understood, like and I don't get back to you within like an hour or two,
Mhm.
I'm obviously tied up. But if you need it sooner than later, just say, hey, I actually need this sooner. Like, do you know an ETA or when we can get this rolled out?
Mhm.
And I think being very clear too, like in Slack, we have guidelines, like instead of, try to write in very clear, concise statements versus, paragraphs that are hard to follow and things like that. And if you are asking a request of someone, especially with our development team who has a million tasks on their plate, I'm always like, this is not urgent. This is medium level. This is something that I noticed,
Mhm.
but let's just put on the request board. So I like to be very clear and direct so that people, when they get a message from me, they're not like, oh no, I have to, scramble. Because nobody wants to scramble if they find out that they
Right.
scrambled and then they don't need it done for a week later. So I try
Mhm.
to be courteous with that.
Awesome. So let's talk about productivity as well, like while working remotely. So when it comes to asynchronous communication, or like when you have a flexible work policy, like you don't have to stick to the schedule, right? So and sometimes then like sometimes people may like you may procrastinate, right? Like because you don't have any like deadline. Suppose. So how do we like make sure that everything is getting done? Like how should we create a schedule and things like that to work if effectively.
I think having a system for your company that works best for everyone, that everybody is understandable of, like, how goals are set and what the expectations are. So as a company, we follow the Traction EOS model. It's the Entrepreneur Operating System model. And every quarter we get together as a leadership team and we set the company goals. So every quarter the leadership team meets and says, what is the most pressing issues of the company and what do
Mhm.
we need to achieve this quarter to push the company forward. So those become the company goals. Then each department, a week after we have our leadership meeting, each department meets and sets the department goals for the
Mhm.
quarter. And they say, based on the company goals that we know are most important, what are our goals based on those? And then what's the individual goals for each person? So what's nice about that is that it's started by the company vision and where we need to all go together, so as a
Yeah.
team, and then each individual department identifies the goals. And then the best thing is that every quarter each person knows what their goals are.
Mhm.
And it's very clear and defined. And then every week we have a meeting as departments where we go through each goal and we say if it's on track, off track, and if it's off track, we talk as a department and help each other. Hey, I know, if this is off track, what can we do to help? Is it off track because we're not allocating enough resources? Is it off track because you have too many projects on your plate? What is the issue? And then we work together to alleviate that so that the person can be more productive. So the reason I bring up the model is that productivity is self-managed, I believe, in a lot of ways.
Exactly. Yeah.
Most people are very good at managing their time as long as they know what they have to get done. You know,
Right.
like a lot of people know, like, hey, at the end of this week, if I have to get this done, and there's some people who will wait until Thursday to get
Yeah.
it all done by Friday. And if that works for them and they're not stressed out, at the end of the day, if they're completing their goals and it's
Right.
not blocking anybody else, it works, right? So what I like about this model is that it allows everybody to do their own productivity. And because of the weekly check-ins, there's no surprise at the end of the quarter that somebody hasn't performed their goals. And it also allows us to help each other out, because sometimes, you know, I'm an overachiever. I'm one of those people who it's like, if we need to get something done, like I'll roll up my sleeves and I'll get it done. And you know, it's affecting my schedule and my like, you know, ability when other people are happy to help. So
Yeah.
it allows people to say, okay, you have too much on your plate because this company goal is really reliant on your work. So let's all work together. And with that, with the productivity, like per person, yeah, I just really think in a remote organization, it's important to have weekly check-ins at the minimum. And those check-ins don't have to be like cheesy where you know, it's not a micromanagement thing either, where a manager's like, what are you doing today? It's just more about like, how are you feeling? What's on your plate this week?
Yeah.
Here's what your teammates are working on. Here's what the company is working on, and how can we help you achieve your goals?
Yeah. Makes sense. So, you know, as you work with like hundreds of companies across the globe, and like when they have like thousands of remote employees as well. So what are you seeing with the companies right now, like how they are navigating hybrid work? And like right now, like it seems like almost pandemic is ended, like but nobody is sure about that. Maybe right now nothing is, you know, we can't say we are not sure about
Of
anything.
course.
So maybe anything could happen. So but I think some companies are like trying to bring back the employees, and some want to stick to hybrid, some people wants to go back to office, some people want to stay
Yep.
remote. So how do we solve this, all the mess, like what is going on in the industry?
So similar to how we had an agricultural revolution, an industrial revolution, this is the work revolution. And 10, 15, maybe even just 5 years from now, we will look back and see that there was a significant shift in human behavior in regards to how we work because of the pandemic, because everybody had to go remote, and because people received remote work in different ways. Like, what we do know, there's no perfect formula for companies, right? Some companies want to go back to the office 5 days a week. Some companies want to be 100% remote, and everything in between. And there is no perfect formula. What we do know, though, is employees now have had the most flexibility and autonomy than they've ever had. And productivity did not suffer overall across all, like, multiple industries. Productivity did not, you know, things didn't go down in flames. People didn't stop working and just slept all day. Sure, I'm sure we all know somebody who maybe during remote work is not doing as much as they should, but for the majority of people, they actually took it upon themselves. They manage their schedule. They are feeling better because they have an hour to themselves in the morning and the evening because they don't have to commute. And so overall, remote work has been a success. And with that, now companies are realizing employees are not going to go back to the way it was. And there are people who want to go back to the office. There's people who don't want to go back. And what it really comes down to, I believe, is the ability for people to choose. And companies that are going to be the most understanding of this, I think, are going to navigate hybrid work the best. It doesn't mean that a company that wants to have employees in the office 5 days a week is not going to succeed. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is allowing, you know, maybe they have the office and they say, hey, if you want to come in 5 days a week, that's fine. The minimum is 3 days a week, but those 2 days, you know, you can choose to work somewhere close to your home or by your kid's school. It's your choice. So that's my theory on what I think should happen, is that companies should, you know, honor people's individual choices and work with them together to say, okay, here's options for you so we can support you in whatever choices work best for you and your family and your schedule. Now, in regards to what companies are doing, this is really interesting. And what I love to see is we work with companies who use us in so many different ways. One example is a company that is, they have a 5-year lease. They can't get out of their lease right now. So what they did is they're implementing sensors in their company headquarters to see how many people are coming in, so that when their lease is up, they know how much to scale down. Maybe if they're only using 30% of their office, they know how much they should get rid of. But in the meantime, they're working with us to also track the data on, they gave, their 1,000 employees Deskpass. How many of those thousands employees are booking workspaces? Are they booking a desk? Are they booking a meeting room? Are they booking an office? How often are they going in? How close to their home? Because what they'll also do is, one, they're tracking just utilization, which will help them make important real estate decisions. But two, they're also realizing, like, maybe, should we open satellite offices? What should we do? So there's a lot of companies are trying to figure it out on their own, and they're using a combination of these tools to find the best strategy. A lot of times we save companies a lot of money by them switching to us, since we're a pay-as-you-go model versus having their own office, which is a fixed cost. So there's one thing. We see companies, for example, we have a data security company that hundreds of consultants around the US, they are booking meeting rooms 2, 3, 4 times a week for their consultants to meet with clients, for their consultants to meet with each other, across all different markets, across 28 different markets in the US, this company is using. And then we're also seeing other companies that are using, setting different stipends per department. So, a very large company saying, okay, marketing has $2,000 a month that they can use because they need to collaborate often and meet with each other, whereas perhaps accounting only has $750 a month because they don't really need to meet with each other. Maybe they just are renting a meeting room once a month, and giving the accountants access to a desk once a week. So it really ranges, and we're seeing a lot of use of private spaces like meeting rooms and offices by the day. So that the answer really is it's all across the board. But what we can say is, since January of last year, of 2021, month over month, we have seen significant growth. Our business grows 45% a month.
Okay.
And it's
Great.
because companies are going remote
Right.
and they're using, they're trying to figure it out. So it's really cool. Like I said, what I love about this stage that we're in is that everybody is trying to figure it out. There definitely are some, we have a lot of suggestions and things that we do to help companies navigate, but ultimately it depends on where they're located, how many employees they have, what their company culture is, what their current real estate strategy is. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So we're always happy to talk with companies and say, look, talk to us about what your concerns are, what your needs are, and we're happy to give examples of what other companies of your size or your strategy is doing, and just to help out in that way.
Yeah. I think this co-working space could be a future, like that's what it seems like.
We certainly hope so. I mean, I've been co-working for years now, and what's the silver lining of COVID is that everybody now understands what remote work is. Prior to the pandemic, it was a lot of, as people in tech or entrepreneurs or professional services that knew about what remote work was or co-working spaces. And now the whole world has understood what remote is. And a lot of the people in the world have realized that they don't enjoy working from home 5 days a week. And so now co-working, when they learn about co-working being this option that they can go to, and which is oftentimes a lot closer to their home than the company office, it just seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. So this is like a good option which employees have. Like, suppose I think most of if the employees are youngsters, like if they are in their early 20s or late 20s, they do want to go to offices or socialize with people basically. So for them, this co-working spaces are really good. But for the people who are like who already started family, they have kids, they don't want to, they don't need to, and they don't want to go to offices because they can spend the time with the family and the kids and all. So this is the solution.
True. Completely agree with that. Where sometimes when people have, they want to be closer to the home, or they want to work from their home so they can also be home with their children. However, there are plenty of parents and older generations that absolutely love co-working because they like certain environments. Like they actually like, I know a lot of parents will say, like, I need to get away from my kids. Like I need a break. And I think they value, like you were totally right with like a Gen Z, you know, a younger generation. I think they crave to be around other people, and they also want to see their managers more often for professional development and things like that. And so they crave more of like the in-person. Whereas I do think older generations, they crave having that routine. Like a lot of our team clients will say, I've been getting up and putting on a suit for 20 years. I don't want to stop. And I think also they just value the proximity to home. So although they don't want to work from home, they don't want to go downtown. They want to still work in the suburbs, and they want to work within 3 miles of their house versus 10 miles of their house. So yeah, there's different types of workspaces. So there's workspaces that are very corporate, very, buttoned up professional. And then there's workspaces that are almost feel like a cafe. And what's great is that, we partner with 1,200 workspaces around the world in 8 countries right now. And we're adding, more every day. There's something for everybody. So what's cool is like, you can go to the space that really speaks to you.
Yeah. I think this workspace culture, I think it's not much in India. Like it is in few cities, but like, as you said, like you have multiple spaces, like this kind of spaces. I think these are mostly is in US and Europe, like on the west side. I think in here in Asia, I don't think there are a lot of things, but I think it's growing now, especially by WeWork and all. The small players are coming up, along with them. Awesome. So, which are your favorite tools, like which help you work remotely, and the tools which you would recommend to people as well?
Yeah, I'll just speak to our tech stack. Right now, we use Slack for our communication. We use Notion for our virtual workspace, which I love. Our developers just started using ClickUp. They really like that. Developers, they have their own needs and very specific things that they like. And, a lot of times, sometimes services don't work for them the way that it works for the rest of the team. So I love that they are always aware of what works best for them. So they just started using ClickUp for their project management, and they really love that. We used HubSpot for marketing. We used Intercom for support, which I loved. We're now switching over to HubSpot. For what else? We have so many design tools and things like that. So if people have any questions, please let me know. But in terms of like the best thing that you don't need to have a million tools to have a good company culture and to operate your company. Like, I think it's more about the policies you have in place. So for example, Slack can get unruly if people are expecting immediate conversation or immediate responses. If people are, only talking in private channels versus the department channel, and people are not getting information. So I think it's better to have less amount of tools and clear understanding of how the best practices are to use them versus having, so many, because it can be easy to be bombarded with a lot of solutions and nobody knows how to use them.
Yeah, makes sense. So what's your company strategy? Like, are you staying remote or hybrid or like going back to office?
So technically we have been remote from the beginning, but we also have offices. The reason is because one, we're co-working space owners ourselves. So we have co-working spaces. We technically have a headquarters in Chicago because my partner just opened a new co-working space. But I also have an office here in Miami. My other founder has one in New York because we use our products. So we can, we have access to 5,000, offices and meeting rooms. But I mean, I love the office. Like I said, we get together as a team every quarter. And I love that. So I still one day I want to have the office like a Twitter or a Facebook that is just magnificent, right? But I think we'll never be the company that's like, hey, we're going to be here every day. I love the idea, this hybrid. What I'm seeing a lot of companies doing is once a quarter or twice a year, they bring all their employees together. And if you actually calculate the cost, like if you are 100% remote company and you're not paying $5,000 or $50,000 a month for an office, you can actually afford to bring all your employees together once a year for let's say $150,000, $150,000. So I think what I really like about that is being intentional, and then when you gather, it's more meaningful, it's intentional. So yeah, I mean, I think what I really like about that is being intentional, and then when you gather, it's more meaningful, it's intentional. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I would
makes
still love
sense.
to have like a Twitter type of an office one day, but until then, and even then, we'll still have offices around the world where employees
Yeah,
can meet up
yeah, yeah.
together. So who
Right.
knows? You know, we'll see,
Yeah.
and maybe holograms one day, and you know, we'll be in the metaverse. We'll see.
So, what are your top three favorite books and like in remote space or like by personally as well?
Whew, that's hard because I'm a huge bookworm. So really, it would have to go based on like category. Like,
Mhm. So let's stick
gosh,
with
I mean,
remote, maybe remote work kind of.
yeah. So with remote, I mean, there is a book actually by Jason Fried called Remote. There's also Rework. He is the founder of Basecamp. I really love his policies on work. So
Mhm.
look up Jason Fried. He's a great person on remote work. In terms of remote work, I still think it's about the employee practices. So I think the Culture Code is one of my favorite books in regards to employee engagement and team building best practices, because remote work is truly about making sure your employees are engaged and feel connected to your
Yeah.
vision. So I would say the Culture Code is a big thing. Um, gosh, what else for remote? I just read a lot of, I'm like, I
Mhm.
think with the co-working industry in itself, I get a lot of my information from our associations and from our publications. So if anybody has questions about how to get more involved in the co-working world, I can refer. I mean, there's so many different associations and publications about co-working. And
Mhm.
we're very much still like a talk to each other industry where we have conferences, we meet with each other. So yeah, and I have hundreds of books I can recommend. So if anybody has any questions, like just
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
send me a
sure.
message and I'm happy
Right,
to
right.
share with you.
So I have noticed one thing. I think you also invest in companies, right? Like women founding companies.
Yeah, I did that in Chicago. It's currently on pause just with everything going on. But at the
Mm-hmm.
time, we wanted to have a collaborative way to invest in companies that we didn't have any equity in exchange or anything like that. It was
Oh,
just a
oh,
way to
nice. Mm-hmm.
pool our money together and help. The concept at that time was that when you are a very early stage entrepreneur, a grant such as $500 or $1,000 can take you, leapfrog you ahead 10 steps. Because I remember when I was starting my first co-working space and I had zero marketing, like I had, you know, I was going month to month, like in terms of expenses and things like that. I needed, you know, just having a new website built for less than $1,000 was still something I couldn't afford at that time, like
Mm-hmm.
from the business revenue. And so our goal was to help people who at that stage, $500 or $1,000 could really, really take your business 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
Because there's so many grants out there where, you know, you get a large sum of money, but you have to prove that you're at a certain level and all these things. And like, look, when you're early on entrepreneur, you are this, you know, you are so scrappy, you are all in, you are giving it your all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes it's the hardest time to get funding because you haven't had a lot of traction. And so we just put together a fund where, you know, we were able to grant people money who really could take that money and use it for something that would move them ahead.
Right. Amazing. So, any last message for our women listeners on Women's Day?
Oh,
Or what? Yeah.
well, women's issues are my heart and soul. So I think the thing I would say is, you know, continue to surround yourself with incredible women who inspire you, who also support you. Because for me, a big part of me growing my business and just my personal self is to be surrounded by women that make me laugh, women who inspire me. You know, a long
Mm-hmm.
time ago, I cut out anybody who was negative. I cut out people who, you know, were complaining and dramatic and things like
Right.
that. I think it's important to, you know, as we get older, we don't have a lot of time for social activities. And so my social activities are like, I actually organize a professional ladies dinner once a month where
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's nice.
any women can join, and it's a way to meet other women and to have good conversations and to start relationships that are deeper than just the kind you will find at networking
Mm-hmm.
events. I think women have an incredible power to be there for each other and support each other. And you know, I look back at my career, and if it wasn't for amazing women along the way, you know, I wouldn't be where I am now. So I think the biggest thing is just to pick and choose the women that you surround yourself. I love the phrase, you are the 5 people that you hang
Yeah,
out with the most.
totally.
And so I always try to, you know, hang out with women who inspire me. But so that's more of my like experience driven message, but overall, I think, my message to women is always to whatever it is that you can, manifest it, like go for it, don't let things hold you back. Put a plan in place and go for it. And if you need help, reach out and ask for help. But, the sky is not the limit. We're in a multiverse, go past the sky.
Awesome. Amazing. So it was really great talking to you, Nicole. I think we talked.
Yeah.
It was really amazing. And especially, I think the collaboration, co-working space it could be a future, and it could push remote work further as well.
I agree. And we've bet on it. So we certainly hope so. But look, I quit my job 8 years ago to start a co-working space. I went all in. I believe in it. And truly, as somebody who's worked in different office environments, from the very sterile 9 to 5 clock in, clock out, to the working in my car, being alone, salesperson, isolated. I've seen lots of different environments, and I love co-working. It's the happy medium of flexibility and autonomy and just community as well, right? Because as we go, people think that we're going to all of a sudden become hermits and everyone's going to go in the metaverse and no one's going to talk to each other. I don't believe that at all. Technology adds to our lives, but it's never going to take away from the human component. And it's actually going to allow us to have richer communications, because when you go to places, you're going to be a lot more intentional. You're going to say, if I'm leaving my house, I want to go to a place where I can meet other people, where I can engage in a very meaningful way. So co-working provides that. It's literally like a co-working space is built for people to be productive and meet other people and engage with other people, and usually get some really nice coffee and get some nice views as well. But
basically,
it's
sometimes
the future for sure.
Sometimes remote work is, you can't just work remote work 5 days a week. So even if someone wants to go there for 2 days or 3 days, so it depends on person to person, but you always have an option. It's not like you have to just stick to your home, basically. So that's the good thing.
To each their own. Everybody knows what works for them. I agree.
Right. So amazing. So thank you so much once again for doing this. It was really amazing talking to you.
Yes, thank you. You are a fantastic host. You have really good questions. It's such a great pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.